Okay, welcome back. So now it's time to take it to the next stage or to the next step. But before we do that, let's just go in and sum up what we have learned until now, if you have watched the prior movies that I have created. The reason I do this is because it is a recurring problem that's coming up where people are saying that, hey, you said to me that if I am launching a workstation as a host, everybody can see it and so on. And they do some fundamental mistakes or forget what is needed to make it work. And then they call me and said, oh, but I can't make it work. So what do I do wrong? So let me just go in and take it once again. As you can see here, I'm recording this on a Mac desktop. And I have started Filemaker up on this computer here. But I have not yet launched the solution. The solution hasn't been started up, but Filemaker is running. Then in another window here, I have VNC Viewer, where I have access to a Windows 7 desktop where I have Filemaker launched. And as you can see here, I'm in the Launch Center. And when I go into Launch Center, I have these two tabs, My Solution and Hosts. And as you can see in here, and as I mentioned in my prior movies, I have 2 workstations plus I have a server. And right now I'm simulating that I want to run the solution on my Mac computer. That is a workstation, and I wanted to host the solution. But as you can see here, even that the Mac is started up, even that the program is started up, I haven't yet grabbed the solution yet. Then if you go in and see here, you can see I can only see the server. Because remember, I mentioned before, we have to refresh it, of course. The way I do it is that I go in and say, okay, I close it down. I go up here to Files. I go up here and say Open Remote. And here you can see the only remote computer I can see is my server. I can't see the Mac computer yet. I can't see the solution I want to host on my workstation. But as I have said before, is that it's not enough that you just have FileMaker installed and that you have FileMaker started. It's also important that you go in and grab the solution you want to share. So let's go down here to FileMaker and then go in and just start up the solution now. I get this screen. The reason is that it's asking me, do you want to go in and log in to a hosted version? And it's talking about the server in this case here. Or it could talk about if there were a workstation who wanted to share the solution, then it could talk about that. But in this case, he's really talking about my server. But here, what I want to do on my Mac machine is I want to host it on my Mac. So I'm saying I want to use a local version and then I'll share it with other people on the network. So now I'm starting it up, and here is the solution. And if I minimize this, then you can see over here we just have to refresh. So I just close that down, go up here to File, go into Open Remote, and you will see now there it is. There is my workstation. So it's not enough just to turn on the computer. It's not enough just to have the program running, but you have to go in and grab the solution. As I've also mentioned before, is that when you have it up running, then go in and minimize it if you're doing something else, working in a Word document, or perhaps you have a web app of other kinds that you're working on, then minimize it. But do not close it, because else you can't go in and host it, or the person who wants to come in and wants to share the data that you are providing to them, they can't see it if you don't start FileMaker and you go in and choose the solution you want to host. I have a lot of solutions in here, but remember what a server does. It only goes in and serves everybody else. There is no workstation on that server. You could have, but that's not the optimal way of setting it up. A server should be dedicated only to serve others. But in this case here, I want to show them how peer-to-peer works. And then you go in and you can see here is my Mac workstation. That's the one I really record everything on here right now. And the Mac workstation here, the FileMaker started up. The solution has been chosen. If I go in and close the solution down, say close, you can see now it's not started up. I go over here, then I just refresh it again. I click down, I go up here, say Open Remote. You will see there it disappeared. So let's go back again here. Start up, go in and choose the solution. Go in and say Use Local Version. Then I'll minimize it. Then I'll go over here. Again, there's the Windows 7. I close it here. I go up to File, go up to Open Remote, and you will see here it comes. There is the workstation, the Mac workstation, and here's the solution. As I click here, and then you just click twice, and that's it. Then you're now logged in to the solution. So that's it. I just wanted to emphasize it again because it is a recurring problem where people say, oh, but I just have FileMaker up. Why is it? Because it's not a server, because it's a workstation. You have to launch the solution you want to share with others, and it has to be running in the background. There are some people who say, oh, I went for lunch and then I close it down, but the computer is running. Yeah, but that's not enough. You can't close down FileMaker and the solution. Both of them has to be on. So FileMaker has to be on and the solution has to be launched. Now it's time that we go in and look at the cards, and that could be any card. In this case here, we can just, let's say, the Remarks file card here, the way it is built. I have gone through that in another video and I don't want to rehash it again. Just that very quickly, you have a header, you have a footer, and you have a body. You have some tabs here. The navigation happens either in the header or in the footer. And in regards to the middle, that's where the data is. And then I went in my prior movie and said, yeah, but there is these 6 tabs that goes again on all cards, like it was client card, it was the case card, if it is the address card and so on. These tabs that you have here, these 6 tabs goes again. What can be different is the information that is on these tabs, especially the general tab and the list tab. But when it comes to the 4 last one here, the link, the personal, the key, and the information, these are the same, and they have the same information. So if you go into a card, you can already say, oh, but I know what's on that card because the 4 last tabs is the same. So what is it on these tabs? Let's start from the back and go forward. Information. When you go into the information tab, what can you find in here? In here you can see who created this record. When was it created? What time was it created? Who did it? Then it also shows on the information tab, because it's a log, where you go in and say, hey, who modified this record last? It doesn't have a history. You can't see who modified it over time, but you can see who created it and who modified it last. So in here you can see, okay, the last that modified it was this date, it was that time, and it was that person. Then down here, that's important also. These 3 points. There are 4. There's one called bats, but the bat's name is on some cards and some not. You can go in and give them bats names or names that you can search on. You can use them in like a grouping. But these 3 over here is important. Marked, block, and block from deletion. It is so that as soon as you create a record in this solution, it's not the way FileMaker works as a default. It is something that this solution does, is that when you have created a record, as soon as you create the record, it goes in and block it from deletion. You can't just go in and delete it again. And the reason is that in FileMaker, through security, I can go in and secure each table. That means each record or all records in that table. And when I can do each record, I can go in and say, but that person should not be able to go in and delete anything. So I will make sure that they don't have access to that feature. That could be a function. It could be just a normal button that goes in and try to do something with that card. In this case here, it can't just be deleted. And the reason is that there's so many times where people say, but I created a customer and it just disappeared. And then out of the blue, the person said, oh, right. I went in and I marked some customers or clients for deletion or some case numbers or what it was. And I run multiple deletions and perhaps it disappeared, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't let me. That's true. It shouldn't let you. So what is built in here is that it says here block for deletion. There are functions, it has to be said, but there again, to security, we can block people from just do it, is that if you do mass deletions and you're using the default stuff in the FileMaker, then it has to be set up in security. Here it's set up on the card just to make sure that people don't go in and delete a record by mistake. So if I wanted to delete this record, and remember there is these 3 tabs up here. There is so you can create a new record, so you can go in and delete a record, so you can go in and duplicate a record. Let's say I wanted to delete this record in here. And the reason I take this is because I just set it up as a test, so it doesn't matter if I go in and delete it. So if I go in here and say, okay, then let me delete it then. I press delete, and then it says here, delete current remark file record. Yeah, sure, let me delete that. Then it says here, the record is blocked for deletion. You're not able to delete blah, 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 blah. Why? Because in here, this one has to say no. Right now it says yes, it's blocked for deletion. So it has to say no here. And then I could go up here, press delete. Do you want to delete this record? Yes. Permanent delete the entire record? Yes. and now it's deleted. Now it disappeared. So you even get asked a second time. One thing is that you have to go in and release it for deletion in here, but when you delete it, it doesn't just delete it, it goes really in and say, are you really sure? Because so you don't do it by just a quick mistake. So this is the information tab. So the information tab shows us when the record was created and when it was modified last, and in here we go in, and the most important here is the block for deletion. Then in regards to the keys, this is just for information. Which keys do we have in this table? And in this solution, we have certain IDs, and these can't be changed. You can see I click here with the mouse here, and I can't get into them. Why? Because these here on the right, these the system needs. These are set up so that the system can use them across tables so that you have what we call relationship between the tables, and it uses these 5 fields: the database ID, the table ID, the entry ID, the reference ID, and the record ID. These 5 is used to keep track on everything you do in there. So if you go into another table, let's go over to, let's say, the address over here. No, let's take a case. If I go into the case here and I go into the key, you will see it has the same. It also here on the left has a code, description, and keywords. And keywords is again for groupings. But here, these fields here, what's important here is that these the system needs, and therefore the user cannot change. In here you don't go in every day, it's not needed to, because the system will keep track on what's going on there. It has to be said when we're talking about the record code, many times if you need to, the record code is something that the system will suggest, but you can correct. If then later you decide, that is really a misinformation, it would be much better if it said something else than 102. It could say 102AB or something else. Then you can correct that, and the system will not fall apart, because the system needs these 5 fields over here to keep track on it. This is for your information, and in some cases also for you to track. But for the system to hold everything together, it needs these 5 fields over here. This is something that you can correct. The description you can go in, you can add a second description, and in some places, in this case here with keywords, you can go in and make changes. That was the key field. And as you can see here, we are on the Windows 7. But before we continue, let me jump over to the Mac computer, because it makes certain things easier. Also, the graphic is a little bit better. So let's do that. And here we'll just minimize the VNC session and then go over here to the Mac. And here we are on the same card. We're on the Remark file card, because we can see it up here to the left. And we just had the key here. And now we go into Personal. And down here you can see there's 4 icons. It has to be said 3 of the icons goes against in all tables that's related to clients. It has to be said they're not all there when it comes to the setup, but to clients information in regards to addresses and so on, there is these 3 icons. What's specific and special for this table, for the remarks table, is that there is a 4th, and that's called document files. But I'll get into that very shortly, but let's go through this here. Every single table has comments table, so that you can add a comments for each single record. So each single table has, so you can add a comments to a specific record. You see here I added test here. If I go up to another record up here, you can see it disappears because it's not specific on that record. You can see this on this record, but if I go to another one, it disappears. So you can have specific comments on a specific record in a specific table. But again, it has something to do with clients. It's not the setup. Then you have here so that you can add an image or picture to each single record that is record related to the client. You can go in here in all tables they have, so that you can go in and add an image on each single. So let's say here I have an image here and I want to add that. Remember I spoke about just drag and drop. These fields are meant to absorb these files. So if I have a file, a graphic file, an image, I can just take it here. It's on my desktop. I just drag it over and let go, and now it is in that field. There's still a copy on your desktop, but it copies it into your database. So every single table, every single record has that individual feature that you can go in and add 2 images. There's room for 2 different images. Then the next one is called remarks. In here we can add as many remarks as possible. If let's say we have done a remark, something everybody should remember of our clients, then we don't have to go in on each single client and write the same remark. You go into the remark table, you write it once, and then you just go in here and you link them to each other so that you go in and say that remark has to be seen on this client. Or if you have a remark that has to follow a specific address or a specific contact, like say that we have a phone number or fax, and there's certain things we have to be aware of, then we can add a specific remark. If comments is not enough, mostly I always say comments is per individual. If I have a remark, I can create one remark that then can be linked to a lot of people because it's the same remark, because then what happens is that if I have to correct that remark, then I don't have to go through every single client. I can just go into the remark table and change it in there because they're just linked to that remark. Again, it is to make it easier so you don't have to sit and do something redundant again and again and again. If there is something that you can do once instead of 10 times or 100 times, then that saves time. So here remarks, and every single table have so that you can go in and add a remark. Then what I said here, what was specific, is this one, documents. Documents in here, I'm able to store 2 documents per record in here. But remember, in remarks, I can have as many remarks as I want. So I can have 10 remarks I can link to one client. I can add as many remarks I want to a client. If I need to take 100 remarks, I can do that. So when we go in and look at it in the term of a database, it is so that it's not just one-to-one, it is one-to-many. So it is linked so that you can have one specific client, but that client can have many addresses, that client can have many ways of being contacted, that client can have a lot of stuff I need to know about that client. It could be something that has to be filed every year, but I want a copy on his client card so that I can go in and say, oh, but we went in and did this and this. And then also remember, even a remark has a comment. So you can add a comment to a client, but you can also add a comment to a remark, and you can have as many remarks as you want to a client. I hope it makes sense. But let's go back again here to the document. Okay, as we can see here, I have 2 fields, 2 document fields. That means I can have 2 documents per remark, like I could have 2 image files per remark. The fields works the same way. Remember, with the graphic file, we could just drag and drop. We can do the same here with the document fields. I have prepared here a list of different document types or file types that you can drop in here, these fields. I could drop a normal Word document or a PDF document. I could also drop an Excel document or a PowerPoint. I could also drop, let's say, a graphic file, a JPEG, or even a movie. I could even, if I had, let's say on a desktop here, I had a solution I have created in Filemaker, and I wanted to save that solution to this client of mine, and I wanted to put it in here, my remarks in my documents, I could do the same. So let me show you how that works. Let's say that I'll take the Word document, drag and drop. Then I'll take the PDF, drag and drop. If I wanted to see the contents of these 2 files, let's say the document file here of Word, if I wanted to see it, I couldn't launch it directly from the field here in the database. I couldn't just click twice and then it launches it. Now, I have to export it out of Filemaker before I can do it. But that's easy because I will highlight the field that we are talking about. Here in this case it is the document or Word document. Then I will click on the right side of the mouse button and then I will export the field content. In my case here I've set it up so that this file will now be exported to my desktop, and not to overwrite the file that I just took it from before. Then I'll just rename it and put a 2 there. I have also down here set it up to that when I now decide to save that content of mine from this field to my desktop, I want it to launch automatically with the program the extension belongs to so that I can see the content. So if I press here save, you will now see it saves it on the desktop here, and then it launches the Word program, and here is the file. So let's close that down. Let's say that it was the PDF I wanted to see. Then I'll go over here and click on that field. Make sure that there is a blue frame. And then again, right mouse button, export field content. I will save it on my desktop, and I'll launch it automatically, and up here I'll just rename it not to overwrite the other file. I will say save, and it should now launch automatically the PDF reader, and now I can see the content of that file. If I wanted to get rid of the content of these two fields, I'll highlight again, click on the right side of the mouse button, and then say cut. That's it. I took everything out there in that field. Go over to this field here, say the same, right mouse and say cut. That's it. I took them away. Let's put in the PowerPoint in one, and let's take the Excel in the other one. Let me see what is in that Excel file. Again, highlight the field we're talking about. Keep the cursor over the icon here in the middle of the field, and then just right side or the right mouse button, and then export the field content. I save it to the desktop and say save. It launches Excel, and the Excel document should come up here in a few seconds. I apologize, it's a little slow, but the reason is that it's running the program that we are recording the video with. It's running Filemaker and also be a host. At the same time, it is running the VNC viewer where I have the Windows 7 in, so it's a little, how can I say, the resources is depleted very quickly when you have all that started up. As here you can see, here's the Excel document. Let's say that I go in and make some changes to that document. Go up here and then I'll just, let's say, correct the phone number up here and say, no, it's not, it is 223 there. And then I will go up and save it. If I save this now to the desktop out there, close it, then it doesn't save it in the database, because the reason I had to export it out to the desktop is that the security and the integrity of the database, to keep that, then it doesn't get launched directly from the database. And it doesn't allow me to go in and make changes in Excel, and then it just stores it directly into my FileMaker solution. It saved it in the file that I have on my desktop. But what I could do is just go in and delete the Excel file here, just say cut, and take the one that was saved on my desktop, the one I worked on, take it and drag it in. That's it. Now I have the changes that was made. So if I go in here and I say export, and I can make that a tree there and say save, then it will go in and launch, and you can see here 223. So here's the corrections. So that's the way I'll go about that. The reason I mentioned that you could also store a video file in here is very simple. When you go in and you drop these files in these containers, it absorbs them and brings them into that file structure of FileMaker. That means it pumps up the size of that file. It becomes enormous. And let's say that you have a movie of 1 gigabyte and you want to drop that into the database, then you simply expand the database with 1 gigabyte, and before you look, then you will have this enormous database that could be up to 1 terabyte big, because I'm dropping in these huge files, and because I have set FileMaker to absorb them instead of perhaps store the files externally and then just store the link. That we can do. The only thing I have against that is that that means that everybody who does that, they have to be aware of that the content, when they store these files in these fields, is not stored in the database. If I back up FileMaker, then the content, that means these documents will not be backed up, because they are now on another folder. They're not stored in that file. They will be someplace else. So when I make a backup of my FileMaker, then I also have to make sure I take a backup of these files that's stored in another folder. But I'll get into that a little bit more in detail later. But as you can see here, I can simply go in and store these different types. Like I said, I could take an image file and drop in here, and here you see it. I click on it, click on the right side of the mouse button, export it, go in and rename it here, and then just say save it. It will launch preview, and here's the file. So that was these two. So here I can store 2 documents per remark, and I can have as many remarks I want on the client. That's not bad. So let's go in and take a look at link. So what is link then? Yeah, how can I explain that easily? Let's go out to the main menu. Link is so that all the points out here on our main menu, like I've said before, we can have clients. These clients can be connected to a case every address can be connected to the client. Telephone numbers connect to the client. A special remark or remark be linked to a client. But let's say that I want, for instance, a case to be linked directly to a phone number, but I don't have a client. Then this case number here could be directly linked to a telephone number. I could also, like here, I could say, yeah, but I have a special remark. And in that remark, I want so that there's a phone number I can ring. Person I'm calling is not a client, but I have a phone number. Then I could link a remark to a phone number, so that you can link anything that you see here on the main menu with each other. Let me show you how that works really. So if I go into remark files again, you can see here I'm on the second test because the first one I deleted. I go into link. Down here you see the three icons here. You can either create a link, you can delete a link, or you can just look the link up. This one is always there. It doesn't depend on what tab I'm on, because if I'm on general, you will see it's still here. If I'm information, it's still here. But as soon as I click on this, go to the links, then it opens this window. So let's say I want to link this remark here to a remark. Let's try that just for the fun of it. So here link, and now I want to create a link from this to another remark. So I click here, create a link. Do you want that? Yes. Then I get this wheel, and you can see it goes in all directions. So I said, yeah, but I want to link this remark I was standing on. I will link that to another remark. So I click remark. Then I go down here. Let's take the one here, say this better work. So let me click on that. Then it gets a little dark. That means it's highlighted. And then I go up and say continue. Then you can see here it says, is that the one you choose? Yes. Say OK. Then it goes to that file. You can see here, this better work. So if I go back to a list here, and I go back to my second test, and I go in on the link, there it is. I have a link to something called this better work. Yeah. If I go back again to this better work, go down here and find it and say this better work, and I go in here to link, then you can see this is linked to my test 2. So these two are now linked. So if I go into a remark and I want to see if I have linked it to anything, there could be a client, it can be a phone number, it can be another special remark, then I go in here to link. I hope that described what this is about. It is to link things to each other so that if I have, let's say, a client, and I want to go in and link that client to another client, I can do so. If that client I'm linking to perhaps is not a spouse, but that could be a brother and so on, because the client gives you the permission to go in and create a spouse and children, but not perhaps a brother or other family member, then I could link a client to a client. I hope that makes sense. So that was the link tab. Then I have the list tab. You saw how I work this, where I go in and you can see here's the different remarks that I have in here. All of them are tests and just for the test of it. So here you can see here I can click on any of them and it brings me to that. Then the general tab, because remember it started up with the D6 tab goes again on all tables. All the windows that you can get into has these 6 tabs with a few exceptions in the setup. So here on the general, on the remarks, you can see here we have a remark number, a remark code. And so these information here is different from others. Let's say I go out here of my remarks and I go into a case. Then you will see on the general it says case number, description. So it doesn't say the same as it was in remarks, but that says itself that it shouldn't be. And if I go in and say list cases, if I list them here, click on list up here, you can see here is all my cases with the clients that is linked to these cases. So let me go back to general. Then here you can see here, then I said in a prior movie that everything between list and link, these can be different. In this case here there's a client tab and there's a log tab. The reason there is a log tab is because we can have case files and these case files can become case logs, because if I change these case files, I want to log of what was before. Then we have links again, and link looks the same here on the case file as it did over on the remarks. Here personally it's the same. You can have comments, but you can also have images and you can have remarks. The only thing you don't have here is, and that's what I told, was that in remarks you have that extra tab called documents. That tab is only in remarks. It is not on any others. Then I have key. I have told you what that is about. And then I have information. I have gone through that also. So you can see they look the same, and it does the same on all. So you can see this was the case number, there was the remark number here. It looks exactly the same, with the exception you can have extra tabs in here between list and link, and they can be different, and then also the contents on the general tab could be different, but else that's it. So these 6 are the same. So if you ever wonder what is on these tabs, doesn't matter which one you go under of the tables that you have out here, either address or your contact information, it's the same. That's it. That's all what I wanted to tell about these default tabs that you have on the cards. And these 6 tabs goes again on all tables, just that you know it. Thanks for watching.